when it comes to the outright abject corruption of Mark Carney. Have you heard the latest? That Mark Carney apparently met with some Beijing council and then claimed that he didn't know what it was about. Here, this is the article from the Globe and Mail, which Mark Carney, in a beautiful soundbite that I'll be playing for you, talk about someone who wants to sound like Trump, referring to the Globe and Mail as kind of fake news. This is what the Globe and Mail reports. Carney says he had never heard of Pro-Beijing group despite photos with its leaders. This, you will recall, comes in the wake of the scandal. I didn't break it, but I certainly talked about it, of the Chinese communist WeChat app ostensibly supporting Mark Carney, creating a narrative and allegedly, according to Canadian officials, promoting a narrative that Mark Carney is the voice of change in Canada. He is the disruptor to the status quo in Canada. A bigger load of shite you could not possibly imagine. Mark Carney is not just the status quo. Mark Carney is the source of the destruction and devastation in Canada. Lest I remind everybody, he's been advising Trudeau as his financial advisor for the last 5 years. This globalist, anti-populist, anti-Brexit, three-passport carrying, WEF Davos attending, Bilderberg meeting invitee, globalist whore. So he's had a bit of a scandal where just this week, WeChat was ostensibly promoting a false narrative to make Carney look like the disruptor of the status quo. He says, I've never heard of this group with whom I have a photo. I am inclined to be forgiving when all that you have, I'll scroll to the photo just to show you, is a photo like this, which looks like it was taken at an event where someone comes up and shakes your hand like Jeremy McKenzie shaking Pierre Poilievre's hand. And then you say, oh, look at that picture with him. You must have known them. I'm amenable to the argument that it's not a fair judgment. I'm also amenable to getting pissed off when someone has to defend themselves and say, I want nothing to do with that Jeremy McKenzie diagonal right-wing extremist rubbish. Yeah, I take pictures with lots of people. I don't know all of their backgrounds, and I'm not going to do a due diligence every time someone says, can I take a selfie with you? This is what the article says. Liberal leader Mark Carney says he has never heard of a pro-Beijing lobby group in the Toronto area, despite photos on the organization's website showing him with two of its senior members. The Globe and Mail reported Thursday that during the Liberal leadership race, Mr. Carney met with the executives of Jiangsu Commerce Council of Canada, JCCC, according to its website, which described the former central banker's entry into politics as, quote, an important turning point in the upgrading of China-Canada relations. And do you know what I'm very skeptical of? That Carney, in all of his globalist wisdom, he knows people. He's connected. He knows banks. He knows banking. He knows finances. He knows the economy. He can lecture Pierre Poilievre on the economy when exposing his own deep-rooted corruption of investing in the very dirty energies that he is supporting by implementing crippling energy policies in Canada. I don't believe that he's never heard of the JCCC. In fact, if you operate in the field, if you are a globalist, in the sense that Carney admits to being a globalist, you have heard of the JCCC. So it's the denial that I've never heard of them. Well, I've heard of them. I took a picture with this guy. Did I know it at the time? Maybe, maybe not. Jiangsu Council says on its site that in an in-depth exchange with two of its leaders, Mr. Carney, quote, highly praised the pioneering role of the Chinese business community in emerging fields such as clean technology, digital trade, and financial technology. Do you understand what's going on here, by the way? He might also have never known that guy in the photo was the president, or what was it? Who's the guy, Jiangxi? He might not know his relation to the JCCC, but do I believe that Mark Carney said these things about China? I do believe that he said these things about China. I mean, we had Justin Trudeau praising the basic dictatorship of the Chinese Communist Party, the Chinese Communist regime, because of its ability to turn an economy around on a dime. So you got to figure, like, what's the truth of this? What's the not truth of this? What's the exaggeration? And where's the benefit of the doubt, even if you don't want to give the benefit of the doubt to people who no longer deserve it? A picture means very little. Even that picture of Mark Carney with Ghislaine Maxwell on its own means very little to nothing. Coupled with the fact that that picture was taken just a few months after they moved to the UK, and Carney starts sending his daughter to the Tavistock institution for whatever therapy. And then a year later, he's at a Prince Andrew party after everyone knew what Prince Andrew knew, what his philanderings were with Epstein. It might mean a little bit more. These people all operate in the same sick circles, and they know what they're up to. But a picture, it's a picture. He denies it. I'm not sure that I believe him. I'm not sure that he didn't know what the JCCC was. But you want to talk about someone adopting the fake news, Trump tactic. Hey, why aren't they calling Mark Carney Trump-esque for calling the Globe and Mail basically fake news? Listen to this when confronted on it. An arrogant, pompous a-hole, which leads me to believe that there's more truth to these accusations than meets the eye. Check this.
Says that this is a tactic China uses to exert influence.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, but you can't believe everything you read in the Globe and Mail. So in your question, and I guess in the article in question, you said I had a meeting with whatever your term was, Beijing group.
Oh, whatever your term was. So this is what you call, I'm going to play it again from the beginning. This is what you call protesting too much by way of feigning ignorance. Whatever the group was. She just said it. JCCC, dude. I know it is. The Jiangsu Council of something. I've only heard it because of this article. I know it. Damn right he knows what the JCCC is. And his way of protesting that he doesn't. Whatever you said, the Beijing group. Yeah, I'm so stupid. I'm so ignorant. I never heard of this Beijing group.
Says that this is a tactic China uses to exert influence.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry, but you can't believe everything you read in the Globe and Mail. So in your question, and I guess in the article in question, you said I had a meeting with whatever your term was, Beijing group. I've never heard of this group. Never heard of this group.
Never heard of it.
Certainly didn't have a set-up meeting with this group. Full stop. So check your sources before you write things like that, okay? Or your colleagues do.
What a snarky little biatch. I never had a, by the way, very important qualifier, a setup meeting. What does a setup meeting mean? Like scheduled in your event calendar?
Meeting. Certainly didn't have a setup meeting with this group.
A set-up meeting with this group can mean a lot of things. Much like Bill Clinton, I did not have sexual relations with that woman. Well, when I said that woman, that woman I was talking about was not Monica Lewinsky. I was talking about Linda Tritt. You didn't know that because in my head, I meant that as in Linda Tritt, not Monica Lewinsky. I couldn't help what you understood. Or I did not have sexual relations with that woman. When I insert a cigar into her vajayjay, that's not sexual relations. That is me just moisturizing a cigar before I choose to smoke it. It's amazing how people can craft the lies to themselves by using these very opaque, ambiguous qualifiers. I didn't have a setup meeting with them. I didn't know who this bullcrap. I believe that you did know. And everybody knows that you are beholden to foreign interests, both in investments, both in liabilities. That's more than both. In terms of investments, liabilities, and crippling political resource advice that you've been giving to Canada that benefits one country and one country only, that being China. And it's just a coincidence also that the only three countries that actively retaliated against Trump's tariffs were Mexico, which has a heavy Chinese influence investment in it, Canada, which is China-owned, and China. In fact, I should have done it the other way. The only three countries that opposed, actively retaliated against Trump's tariffs, China, Mexico, where China has massive investments, and Canada, where China has massive investments. Now, all of this is being reported, by the way, by Sam Cooper, who's on it like white on rice. I didn't intend that pun, but that's actually kind of funny. Here, I just want to highlight this one. Did Mark Carney ever meet with Jiangsu Commerce Council of Canada? In the same way, did Mark Carney never meet with the Jiangsu Commerce Council of Canada? The same way he was no longer with Brookfield Assets Management when they moved their operations out of Canada to New York. Elbows up, Carney. Oh yeah, I never heard of the Pro-Beijing group. Yeah, I've never heard of it. I never had any set-up meeting with them. You remember what he said about Brookfield Asset Management's decision to leave Canada and go to New York because it's probably better for business, better for taxes, and Canada be damned? He said he wasn't involved in that decision, that he had already left Brookfield Assets Management. Lies, or I shouldn't say lies, I should not presume intentions. Factually incorrect. As a matter of fact, incorrect. He was with Brookfield Assets Management. Maybe he forgot he penned the letter recommending to shareholders to approve the move. He was there and he approved it in that he ratified it. He recommended to shareholders to approve it. Maybe he forgot. I won't call him a liar. I'm thinking that he's a liar, but I won't call him one, because I don't know whether or not he truly forgot his role as chair of Brookfield Assets Management when the decision was made and when he pushed the decision to the shareholder. But the corruption with Carney doesn't end there. And we want to go back to the markets, which I've been saying, the markets are reflecting a not functioning campaign by Pierre Poilievre. And there's a lot of people out there saying markets can be manipulated, much like polls can be manipulated. For those who don't know, markets can be manipulated, especially when there's low volume on trades, but not in the same way that polls are manipulated. Polls, as far as I'm concerned, and until proof to the contrary, and Richard Barris, the only one that I trust. Richard Barris and anybody Richard Barris says I should trust are the only ones I trust. Polls are not just propaganda. They are manipulated, dishonest, disingenuous propaganda, because you can get the exact results you want by tweaking what you include and what you exclude. Well, that one really doesn't qualify as a legitimate whatever opinion. We'll disqualify it. Oh, that doesn't really fit within the category of what we want to pull, so we're just going to eliminate it. Much in the same way you can curate the results of an election by disqualifying candidates who might be too competitive. Disqualify Ruby Dalla, and then when you have Chrystia Freeland, Karina Gould, that guy whose name nobody remembers, members, I'm being mean, Bayless or Bailiff, whatever that guy's name was, Bayless and Mark Carney, you have your election. You've curated the candidates so the outcome of the election is equally curated. That's what dishonest polling is about. When it comes to market manipulation of the polls, it is possible. It might even be cheaper than trying to buy off these politicians if the volume of the trades are sufficiently low that if you slap in $1 million bets on Mark Carney, you can drive up his probabilities to 80, 81%, and then create the fodder for public sentiment, which then in turn manipulates the polls, manipulates the people into thinking, well, crap, if the markets say 80%, he must be a good candidate. And then the question is whether or not this is in fact occurring. It's possible that there is this level of manipulation going on. Sam Cooper tweeted this out, and Sam is more in the weeds of the China infiltration of Canadian governments than possibly anybody out there. Tag him and get him on Joe Rogan. Get him on Joe Rogan before April 28th. This is stuff that would blow Joe Rogan's mind, much like Mike Benz talking about USAID. China's involvement in Canadian politics, China's involvement in the criminal drug trade, which we're going to get into in a second. This is what Sam Cooper posted as relates to the betting markets. For people looking at that betting site with 80% choosing Carney, it would be precisely within the realm of precedent if CCP, Chinese Communist Party crime networks, were skewing that. Check out my report from Taipei, Taiwan's intelligence disclosure scoop in 2023. And the bottom line of all of that, I'll give you all the link. How much do lobbyists spend on lobbying? Hundreds of millions. Imagine you could manipulate a market with $1 million in liquidity just to buy up shares and drive up price, sell shares and drive down price, because you can buy no to Pierre Poilievre as well. So within the realm of feasibility, it's been done before. It might even be cheaper than running blackmail operations. It might be even cheaper than running lobbyists. It might be even cheaper than gifting people politicians things. It might be cheaper than threatening them. Threatening, in as much as it might not cost hard money, has more exposure that itself has monetary value. So it's entirely possible Sam Cooper entertains the idea based on prior reporting of what was done in Taipei, which was similar. But when I say that, it's inexcusable that Pierre is running a campaign that I think has so many clear deficiencies because there are so many clear problems with the Liberals and their decade, not lost decade. That's not strong enough, Pierre. Decade of devastation is what you should be calling it. This is so much free advice. My goodness, people give me shit for giving free advice. Decade of devastation. Decade of destruction. Decade of degradation. Decade of dehumanization. Have 4 different billboards of it with different elements of what represents the last decade of liberal rule. Decade of dehumanization, and go after COVID restrictions. Go after jab mandates. Dehumanization, degradation, devastation, and anything else that's a D so you can have the alliteration. Decade of drug overdoses. How about that? Western Standard reporting this. If you thought it was bad, you have no idea. RCMP bust BC fentanyl superlabs, seized chemicals capable of producing 5.5 million doses. The RCMP said there was no evidence the drugs were destined for the United States. Where do you think they're going? No. It's a total lie when Trump says Canada's posing a problem for the U.S. Those drugs weren't destined for the U.S. No, they were destined for the rest of the world. Oh, okay, fine. Trump's right. Trump's wrong then. They're producing more than can kill all of Canada, let alone drugs to service the drug addicts in Canada, which have exponentially increased in numbers as a result of criminal, and I call them criminal liberal drug policies. But no, guys, trust the RCMP. We got a big problem. We can't control the drug manufacturing in Canada, but trust us when we say that despite all of our incompetence that has led to this situation, corruption, incompetence, and liberal policy, trust us when we tell you that they weren't destined for the US. They were going to go to Australia. They were going to go to the UK. So Trump is wrong. Bad tariffs. Fight with Trump on the tariffs and don't fix the shit in your own country. The BC RCMP that's the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, for those who don't know, the dudes on the horses, has announced the successful bust of 3 drug labs in Lower Mainland, at least 2 of which are suspected of producing fentanyl. It was estimated that the actions taken by law enforcement prevented several million potentially lethal doses. Every dose is a potentially lethal dose of fentanyl from ending up on the streets. At a press conference in Surrey on Thursday, Assistant Commissioner David Taboul explained that the busts, which took place between March 26th, were the culmination of an investigation that began in 2023. Take your time, folks. The labs in question were located in both residential and commercial buildings in Pitt Meadows, Mission, and Aldergrove. Whether the facilities were owned or rented was not revealed. Fentanyl precursor, chemicals, and equipment seized by the RCMP at 3 super labs in the Lower Mainland. Where are they coming from? China. We know it. Why are they in Canada? Because Canada's in bed with China. We know it. Where are the drugs going? More drugs that can kill all of Canada? They're not going to the US. Only 1% is caught at the border. Maybe because the border between Canada and the US is basically an honor system of a border, as Sam Cooper explained in his interview with me, whereas the border with Mexico and Canada is a militarized border. Maybe that might be the reason why. Maybe it's because they're not checking train loads going from Canada to the US. Maybe it's because it's going from Canada to Mexico and then across the border to kill 100,000 plus Americans every year. 600 Canadians a month dying from opioid overdoses. 80+% of it is as a result of fentanyl. But yeah, Trump is the big bad boogeyman for imposing tariffs. Corrupt Carney and the Liberal Party has been in bed with Chinese Communist Party criminals, members. They've been bought out. They've been blackmailed through these. Go look up the Markham Casino. And meanwhile, if Mark Carney deserves to lose the election for one thing and one thing only, people, to end on a bit of a laugh, it's this. I don't know who this dipstick is. I'll call him a dipstick. Listen to this.
Every Canadian election, I approach all the different party leaders and see if they will do an interview and a hip flip.
Mark Carney, Prime Minister of Canada.
June the 29th, 1982.
I think people will remember that their first drummer was Tory Crimes. It's all coming back to me now. Something tells me you're going to win.
And I was wondering, Mr. Carney, would you do the hip flip game with me?
Yeah! What the hell was that? I feel dirty. I feel violated. Like I feel like my eyes have been violated with the sound, with the visuals, with the words. What in the name of sweet holy hell was that? Who the hell is that guy? Who thought this was a good idea? And my goodness, meme away with the end of that, people.